What's up, friends? I was talking with a contractor a while back in the FedEx space about some of the stuff that's been happening in the FedEx world. And one of those things is a tool that's come out fairly recently called Spotlight. Now, what Spotlight does is it essentially allows contractors to see a lot of data and metrics about their routes to be able to calculate sort of how well certain routes are performing in terms of the stops per hour and your margins and all sorts of stuff. And by the way, if you try to use those sorts of metrics to evaluate a completely brand new route, you're probably going to get screwed. So don't do that. These metrics are valuable whenever you have your business, you're trying to optimize your own business, you know it well, then those metrics start to matter. If you're trying to use those metrics to evaluate someone else's business, it doesn't work. Anyway, the point is that he's looking through all this stuff and he's like, wow, this is super cool. I could see like how well my routes are performing, which one's sort of like underperforming and so on and so forth. This is great. And on one side, sure, it is great. But on the other side, FedEx doesn't just give tools to make our lives easier left and right. Like there is often an agenda. Like there's a reason why they're a billion-dollar company. Like they're smart. I know it's easy to sort of think like these big companies are like stupid and they do everything wrong. Let's just pretend that they're pretty smart because they are. And so one of the things that happens is there's like this alternative agenda that happens with a lot of stuff that FedEx has released to contractors. And in my opinion, we're going to see some big changes. And I think that some of those changes are still kind of like unfolding. And I think it's going to continue to unfold over the next year or two, probably longer. But what that is that if you looked back, the way contractors were like 15 years ago, you could basically throw a dart at a dartboard, buy anyone's route, and you were going to be reasonably successful. Like, you know, you'd probably be profitable. You didn't have to think real hard. It was fairly easy overall. You know, everything's hard to a degree, right? But it's like, it's a lot easier to manage FedEx routes 15 years ago than it is today. And the point is what this tool is going to do is it's going to force people to start to optimize their routes in a very, very thoughtful way. Whereas before, you could just have a bunch of packages, you got your driver, you go out there, you deliver your stuff, and maybe the guy's backtracking a whole bunch, maybe he's doing a bunch of stupid stuff, maybe his routes aren't optimized at all. It's going to be fine. You're still going to be profitable. You're still going to get your contract renewed. It's going to be fine. These days, I don't think so. And so what's happened is you got this metric out here that's, well, these metrics that are basically visible with this Spotlight, you can start to see it. And what I think is going to happen is that FedEx is going to look at the contractors that are kind of running their routes in an idiotic fashion and basically kind of massage those contracts to where it's like kind of impossible to be profitable unless they start to run it better. And they're going to be able to use that tool to be able to run it better. And so what FedEx is trying to do is to get more productivity out of those contractors and basically be able to pay the same amount, which is very smart for them. And really contractors should be trying to do that anyway. The difference is that I think in the future, and even right now, we're already starting to see it, is that when these contracts renew, there are some contractors that basically weren't trying to optimize things. They weren't trying to load balance correctly. Load balancing meaning to shift packages from one truck to another one to where it's optimal for each of the drivers and so on. And so when the contractors weren't really doing that because they were absentee or they weren't really looking at this thing, didn't really care, and it was still profitable, like why bother trying to learn all this stuff if you were profitable, you were still getting your contract renewed? Well, at the point to where FedEx starts to renew the contracts in an unfavorable sort of fashion for those contractors that are, again, more on the absentee side, now we start to see some problems. And so the reality is that before, I think routes were a lot easier to sort of manage. It was just like whatever shows up in the truck, you just deliver it. Now you've got to load balance. You've got to optimize that. You've got to put the right drivers that, you know, are fast on the high production routes and the slow drivers that just put their foot on the pedal and drive a whole bunch. You got to put those guys on the right routes as well. And being able to do that is taking time. It is also somewhat stressful to be able to figure those things out. And so with that, I think that we are going to see some sellers pop onto the market because of this, because what will happen is that FedEx, whenever they renew those contracts, it's going to be so unfavorable that they're going to be like, I got to get out of this thing. I don't know what's going on. I don't care to know what's going on. I just want to sell it. I'm done with it. And I get it, that's fine, but we need to know that those people are selling for that reason. You also need to remember that whenever FedEx does something great or just gives extra metrics just for fun, like there's often another agenda that comes along with that. And so also the thing about the idea of a lot of people looking at this business just trying to say, well, is he really making the amount of money that he's saying? Sure he is, but think about that ease of management pillar, because I'm always talking about the 3 pillars of evaluation. Think about that ease of management. And when that decreases because they're spending more time on their business, that is going to spur a lot of people to sell. So the point is that as we move forward, we really want to start to think about how much time we really have to be able to continue to improve the efficiency and the optimization of those routes. And hopefully that'll help you understand why some of these guys are selling, even though it looks like it's a really profitable, good business. He's only working 5 hours a week. Yep, he is today. But in the future, he might have to work 15 hours or whatever it may be. So keep all that stuff in mind. Hopefully this helps out a little bit. Take care. Talk soon. Bye-bye.